Welcome back to the channel everyone. I'm really glad you're here today because what we're about to dive into is one of the most fascinating and mind-bending stories in modern coin collecting, a story that sounds impossible at first, a story that makes people laugh in disbelief, and then slowly pulls them into absolute shock as the evidence and possibilities begin to stack up. Because today we're talking about a humble 2016 1-cent coin, a penny most people would flick into a jar, drop on the sidewalk, or ignore entirely, yet this specific penny has been whispered about in elite numismatic circles as being worth up to $17 million, and no, this isn't clickbait or fantasy built on nothing. This value comes from a convergence of rare errors, minting mistakes, timing anomalies, metal composition irregularities, and historical context that together create what could be one of the most valuable modern coins ever imagined. And as we explore this story, keep in mind that the world of rare coins is filled with once ordinary objects that became extraordinary through accidents, oversight, and chance, and the 2016 1-cent coin sits right at the crossroads of all of those factors, making it a perfect storm of value, mystery, and possibility that still has collectors, graders, and historians debating what might actually exist out there in someone's pocket or coin jar without them even knowing it. So let's start at the beginning. The year 2016 was not just another random year for U.S. coinage. It was a time when mints were operating at massive scale, pushing out billions of coins to meet everyday circulation demand, and whenever production reaches that kind of volume, the probability of errors increases dramatically, especially when multiple facilities, multiple dies, multiple metal suppliers, and evolving quality control systems are involved. And the U.S. Mint, despite its reputation for precision, has a long documented history of mistakes slipping through. Some small, some massive, and some so strange that they defy easy explanation. And in 2016, the 1-cent coin was still being struck primarily in zinc with a thin copper plating, but the infrastructure of the mint still contained older equipment, experimental alloys, leftover planchets from test runs, and contingency stock that could be pulled into production under pressure. And that's where the story of this $17 million penny truly begins, because one of the most valuable possibilities surrounding this coin is a wrong planchet error, where a penny is struck on a planchet intended for another denomination or even another composition entirely. And while wrong planchet errors are not unheard of, what makes the 2016 penny extraordinary is the possibility that it could have been struck on a planchet made from a solid copper alloy, a bronze alloy, or even a transitional experimental metal that was never intended for circulation. And if such a coin exists, especially one that weighs significantly more than a standard 2016 penny, it would immediately raise red flags and trigger intense scrutiny, because the U.S. Mint officially stopped using solid copper planchets decades earlier, and yet documented cases from other years have shown that stray planchets can survive in storage for years, even decades, and accidentally re-enter production. And if a 2016 penny were struck on a pre-1982 copper planchet or a specially prepared test planchet, its intrinsic metal value alone would skyrocket. But that's just the beginning, because the real value explosion comes when that wrong planchet error is combined with other major minting mistakes, such as a double die obverse or reverse, where the design is stamped twice at slightly different angles, creating visible doubling on letters, numbers, and design elements. And double die errors are among the most coveted by collectors, especially when the doubling is bold and easily visible to the naked eye. And imagine a 2016 penny with dramatic doubling on the date, the word liberty, or the motto "In God We Trust," combined with an incorrect metal composition, instantly transforming an everyday coin into something that challenges the boundaries of modern numismatics. And then there's the possibility of a mule error, one of the rarest and most valuable types of minting mistakes, where the obverse and reverse dies used do not belong together. And while mules are extremely rare in modern U.S. coinage, they are not impossible. And if a 2016 penny were discovered with a reverse intended for a different denomination, or even a different series entirely, it would represent a catastrophic breakdown in minting protocol, and such an error would likely be unique or one of only a handful known, instantly pushing its value into the millions. And when experts discuss the $17 million valuation, they are not basing it on a single error alone, but on the hypothetical existence of a coin that combines multiple high-tier errors in one piece, something known in the collecting world as a perfect storm coin. and the more errors stacked onto a single coin, the more exponentially its value increases, not linearly, because rarity multiplies rarity, and this is where off-metal strikes, wrong planchets, double dies, die clashes, rotated dies, and strike-through errors all come into play. And speaking of die clashes, another major contributor to this penny's potential value is the possibility of an extreme die clash, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, transferring parts of the design onto the wrong side of the coin. And while minor die clashes are fairly common, extreme clashes that leave clear, identifiable design elements on the wrong side are far rarer, and when combined with other errors, they become numismatic legends. And then there's the concept of a blockage error, where a previously struck coin becomes stuck to a die and impresses its design onto a blank planchet, creating a mirror image or incuse design. And a 2016 penny with a full blockage, especially on an incorrect planchet, would be considered a once-in-a-generation discovery. And we haven't even touched yet on strike pressure anomalies, which can create weak strikes, missing design elements, or exaggerated features depending on how the metal flows during striking. And if a penny were struck with insufficient pressure due to equipment malfunction, certain details might be missing entirely, such as the date or mint mark. And missing date coins are extraordinarily valuable because they defy the very purpose of coin identification, and when you combine a missing date with other errors, the coin becomes nearly mythical. And now let's talk about the mint mark, because 2016 pennies were struck at multiple facilities, and each mint has its own production quirks. And a penny struck at the wrong mint but bearing the wrong or missing mint mark could indicate die mixing or misattribution, which again compounds rarity. And while mint marks are small, their implications are enormous in the collecting world, and a mismatched mint mark on a 2016 penny could suggest that dies intended for one facility were used at another, something that should never happen under normal circumstances. And this leads into another layer of possibility: the use of experimental or transitional dies, where the design elements are slightly different from standard circulation coins. Perhaps with subtle spacing changes, font differences, or alignment issues that were part of internal testing and never meant to leave the mint. And such dies are usually destroyed, but history shows that mistakes happen, and if an experimental die were accidentally used in circulation, the resulting coins would be among the rarest modern issues ever produced. And then there's the edge of the coin, something most people never think to examine, but edge errors can be incredibly valuable, including partial reading on a coin that should have a smooth edge, or evidence of edge lettering from another denomination. And if a 2016 penny showed signs of edge treatment inconsistent with standard production, it would suggest a severe breakdown in the minting process. And now consider the possibility of a struck-through error, where a foreign object such as grease, cloth, metal shavings, or even another planchet interferes with the strike, leaving unique impressions or voids in the coin's surface. And while minor struck-through errors are common, dramatic ones that obscure large portions of the design are far rarer, and when documented, they fetch huge sums. And imagine a 2016 penny struck through a fragment of another coin or a piece of die material, permanently embedding part of that object into the coin's surface, creating a one-of-a-kind artifact. And then there's the concept of alignment errors, where the obverse and reverse are not properly aligned, resulting in rotated dies. And while small rotations are somewhat common, extreme rotations of 90 degrees, 180 degrees, or more are significantly rarer, and when combined with other errors, they elevate a coin's status dramatically. And one of the most intriguing aspects of the $17 million valuation is the idea that such a coin could be unique, literally one of one. And in numismatics, uniqueness is the ultimate driver of value, because collectors with unlimited resources are willing to pay extraordinary sums to own something no one else can. And if a single 2016 penny were confirmed to exhibit a unique combination of wrong planchet, multiple die errors, experimental elements, and historical significance, the bidding war could reach levels previously unheard of for a modern coin. Next, 2014 1 cent. Today we're diving into a story that sounds almost unbelievable at first but becomes more fascinating with every layer you peel back, because we're talking about a simple 2014 1 cent coin, a penny that most people would never look at twice, a coin that probably passed through thousands of hands without anyone realizing its potential. And yet this specific 2014 penny has been discussed in hushed tones among serious collectors as a coin that could be worth as much as $15 million, and that staggering valuation doesn't come from hype or fantasy alone, it comes from a deep combination of documented minting practices, historical precedents, rare errors, catastrophic mistakes, transitional possibilities, and the undeniable truth that the smallest accidents at the mint can sometimes create the most valuable objects in the world. And as we go through this story together, keep in mind that every legendary coin in history was once ordinary, once new, once ignored, and the 2014 1-cent coin sits firmly in that tradition, waiting for the right set of circumstances to transform it from pocket change into a numismatic phenomenon, because 2014 was a year of intense production pressure for the United States Mint, with billions of coins being struck to satisfy everyday circulation needs, and whenever production reaches that level, perfection becomes difficult to maintain, quality control systems are stretched thin, equipment is pushed to its limits. And small deviations can slip through unnoticed, and those deviations are where value is born, because error coins are not intentionally created, they are accidents, and accidents cannot be reproduced on demand, making them inherently rare. And the 2014 penny is particularly intriguing because it was struck during a period when the penny itself was under constant scrutiny, with ongoing debates about its cost of production, its usefulness, and even its possible elimination from circulation, which led to experimentation, contingency planning, and internal testing within the mint that the public never sees, and those hidden processes create opportunities for extraordinary mistakes, and one of the most significant possibilities surrounding a $15 million 2014 penny is the chance that it was struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the blank piece of metal used was never meant to become a penny at all, and wrong planchet errors are among the most desirable in the collecting world because they immediately indicate a breakdown in mint procedure, and in the case of 2014, this could mean a penny struck on a planchet intended for a different denomination, such as a dime, a nickel, or even a foreign coin produced at the same facility. And even more tantalizing is the possibility that a 2014 penny was struck on a solid copper or bronze planchet left over from earlier decades or created for experimental purposes, because modern pennies are supposed to be zinc with a thin copper plating, and a solid copper 2014 penny would defy official specifications entirely, instantly making it one of the most important modern error coins ever discovered, and weight discrepancies would be the first clue, with a solid copper penny weighing significantly more than a standard 2014 cent, and if such a coin were authenticated, its metal composition alone would place it in elite territory, but the value doesn't stop there, because metal errors often coincide with striking errors. And one of the most powerful value multipliers in numismatics is the double die error, where the die used to strike the coin received multiple impressions during its creation, resulting in doubling on the coin's design, and a 2014 penny with strong, visible doubling on the date, the lettering, or the Lincoln portrait would already be highly valuable, but when combined with an off-metal strike, its rarity would multiply exponentially, and collectors pay astronomical prices for coins that exhibit multiple major errors because the probability of such a combination occurring is incredibly low. And then there's the possibility of a mule error, one of the rarest and most dramatic mistakes the mint can make, where the obverse and reverse dies do not belong together, and while mules are exceedingly rare in modern US coinage, they are not impossible. And if a 2014 penny were discovered with a reverse intended for another denomination or even a different series, it would represent an extraordinary failure in die management, and such a coin would likely be unique, and uniqueness is the single most powerful driver of value in the collecting world, because a one-of-one coin cannot be compared, cannot be replaced, and cannot be replicated, and collectors with deep pockets are willing to pay whatever it takes to own something no one else can. And another major factor contributing to the $15 million valuation is the possibility of extreme die errors, such as a major die crack, die break, or retained cud, where part of the die breaks away and leaves a raised blob of metal on the coin, and while minor die cracks are common, massive breaks that dramatically alter the design are far rarer, and when they occur on modern coins in high grade, they attract intense interest. And imagine a 2014 penny with a large retained cut obscuring part of Lincoln's portrait or the date, combined with a wrong planchet or double die, creating a visually striking and historically significant artifact. And then there's the concept of strike-through errors, where a foreign object interferes with the strike, leaving impressions or voids in the coin's surface, and these objects can range from grease and cloth to metal shavings and fragments of other coins. And while grease-filled dies are relatively common, dramatic strike-throughs that leave clear shapes or textures are far rarer. And if a 2014 penny were struck through a fragment of another coin or a piece of die steel, embedding that material into its surface, it would be a one-of-a-kind error that tells a physical story of the minting process gone wrong. And stories matter immensely in numismatics, because collectors are not just buying coins, they are buying moments frozen in metal. And another layer of intrigue comes from alignment errors, such as rotated dies, where the obverse and reverse are not properly aligned. And while slight rotations are not unusual, extreme rotations of 90 degrees or 180 degrees are much rarer, and when combined with other major errors, they significantly increase a coin's desirability and value. And the 2014 penny also presents the possibility of missing or malformed design elements, such as a missing date, weak strike, or partial design, caused by insufficient striking pressure or improperly prepared dies. And missing date coins are especially valuable because the date is one of the most fundamental identifiers of a coin, and when it's absent, the coin becomes mysterious and anomalous. And if a 2014 penny were missing its date entirely while still showing other elements clearly, it would raise immediate questions about die preparation and strike quality. And then there's the mint mark, or the absence of one, because different mints have different production environments. And a mismatched or missing mint mark on a coin where one should be present could indicate die mixing or improper die use, and such errors are taken very seriously by collectors, because they suggest systemic issues within the mint, and systemic issues can produce clusters of rare errors that become legendary. And speaking of legends, the $15 million figure is not arbitrary, it reflects what collectors believe such a coin could achieve in a competitive auction environment if it combined multiple top-tier errors, pristine condition, and undeniable authenticity. Because we've seen modern error coins sell for millions when they challenge official narratives or reveal previously unknown aspects of minting history. And the 2014 penny has the potential to do exactly that, especially if it were linked to experimental processes or transitional phases related to possible changes in penny composition or production methods. And transitional errors are among the most prized because they exist at the boundary between old and new, representing a moment of change frozen in time. And the US Mint has a long history of experimenting quietly before implementing changes. And if a test planchet or experimental alloy accidentally entered circulation in 2014, the resulting coin would be an extraordinary discovery. And condition plays a crucial role here as well, because an error coin in circulated condition is impressive, but an error coin in uncirculated or near-perfect condition is exponentially more valuable. And if a $15 million 2014 penny exists, it would likely need to be in exceptional shape, with sharp details, minimal wear, and original surfaces, because high-grade examples amplify rarity, and rarity amplifies demand, and demand drives prices into the stratosphere. And another factor that cannot be ignored is the role of third-party grading and authentication, because for a coin to reach such a valuation, it must be thoroughly examined, tested, and certified by respected experts, including metal composition analysis, weight verification, die study comparisons, and microscopic inspection. And if all those tests confirm that the coin is genuine and exhibits unprecedented characteristics, its credibility becomes rock solid. And credibility is everything at the highest levels of collecting. And then there's the psychological element, because owning a penny worth $15 million is not just about money, it's about status, recognition, and legacy. Next, 1997 1-cent coin. Today we're stepping into a story that perfectly captures why coin collecting continues to fascinate people around the world, because this is not just about metal or money, this is about mystery, chance, human error, and the astonishing reality that something as small and overlooked as a penny can become worth a fortune beyond imagination. And today that story centers on a 1997 1-cent coin, a penny that once jingled casually in pockets and cash registers during the late 90s, a coin that most people would have spent without a second thought. And yet this particular year, this particular cent, has become the focus of one of the most intriguing high-value theories in modern numismatics, with experts and collectors discussing the possibility that a specific 1997 penny, because of a unique and catastrophic combination of errors and mistakes, could be worth as much as $14 million, a number that sounds absurd until you understand how error coins work, how rarity compounds value, and how history has repeatedly proven that minting mistakes can elevate ordinary coins into legendary artifacts. And as we dive into this story together, keep in mind that every famous error coin ever discovered was once dismissed as worthless pocket change, and the 1997 penny fits that pattern perfectly. Because the late 1990s were a period of massive coin production in the United States, driven by a strong economy, population growth, and high circulation demand, and whenever the U.S. Mint operates at that scale, striking billions of coins per year across multiple facilities, the likelihood of mistakes slipping through increases dramatically, not because the Mint is careless, but because no industrial process operating at that magnitude can be perfectly controlled at all times. And the year 1997 is especially interesting because it sits at a crossroads of technology and tradition, with older minting equipment still in use alongside newer systems. Older dies sometimes overlapping with updated designs, and long-standing material specifications being questioned internally due to rising production costs, and all of those factors create fertile ground for extraordinary errors, and one of the most significant possibilities that drives the $14 million valuation of a 1997 penny is the chance that it was struck on the wrong planchet, meaning the blank metal disc used to create the coin was never intended to be a penny at all, and wrong planchet errors are among the most dramatic and valuable mistakes the Mint can make because they indicate a fundamental breakdown in the separation and handling of different coin materials, and in the case of a 1997 penny, this could mean it was struck on a planchet intended for another denomination, such as a dime, a nickel, or even a foreign coin produced at the same facility under contract. And such coins often have incorrect weight, thickness, and sometimes color, making them immediately suspicious to trained eyes, and even more tantalizing is the possibility that a 1997 penny was struck on a solid copper or bronze planchet, because by 1997, pennies were officially supposed to be made of zinc with a thin copper plating, and solid copper planchets had been discontinued years earlier, yet history has shown that old planchets can remain in storage bins, stuck in machinery, or overlooked in inventory, only to resurface unexpectedly years later. And if a 1997 penny were struck on a pre-1982 copper planchet, its weight would be noticeably higher, its ring would sound different, and its metal composition would immediately contradict official Mint records, and such a contradiction alone would make the coin extraordinarily valuable. But the story doesn't stop there, because metal composition errors often occur alongside striking errors. And one of the most powerful value multipliers in numismatics is the double die error, where the die itself receives multiple impressions during its creation, resulting in visible doubling on the coin's design. And double dies are not the same as machine doubling, they are true errors that occur before any coins are struck, and when they are strong and clearly visible, especially on key elements like the date, the word liberty, or the motto "In God We Trust," they become highly sought after. And a 1997 penny with a dramatic double die obverse or reverse would already be valuable on its own, but if that double die appeared on a wrong planchet or an off-metal strike, the rarity would multiply exponentially, because the odds of both errors occurring together are incredibly small, and collectors pay staggering premiums for coins that represent multiple independent failures within the minting process. And another possibility that feeds into the $14 million discussion is the chance of a mule error, one of the rarest and most spectacular mistakes the Mint can produce, where the obverse and reverse dies used do not belong together. And while mules are extremely rare in U.S. coinage, especially in modern times, they are not impossible, and documented examples from other denominations have proven that even the most rigid systems can fail. And if a 1997 penny were discovered with a reverse intended for another denomination or even another series, it would represent an unprecedented breakdown in die control, and such a coin would likely be unique, and uniqueness is the ultimate driver of value in the world of elite collecting, because a one-of-one coin cannot be compared, cannot be replaced, and cannot be replicated, and wealthy collectors are willing to pay extraordinary sums to secure something that no one else on earth can own. And then there are die break and die crack errors, which occur when the die used to strike coins begins to fracture under stress, and while small die cracks are relatively common, massive die breaks that create large raised blobs of metal known as cuds are far rarer, especially when they dramatically obscure design elements, and a 1997 penny with a major retained cud covering part of Lincoln's portrait, the date, or the lettering would already be a standout error, but when combined with other anomalies such as off-metal composition or doubling, it becomes something truly special. And visually dramatic coins often command higher prices because they clearly display the chaos of their creation, making them tangible evidence of minting failure. And then there are strike-through errors, where a foreign object interferes with the striking process, leaving behind impressions, voids, or embedded material in the coin's surface, and these objects can include grease, cloth fibers, metal shavings, fragments of dies, or even pieces of other coins. And while minor grease-filled strikes are common, dramatic strike-throughs that leave identifiable shapes or textures are much rarer, and a 1997 penny struck through a piece of another planchet or a fragment of die steel would be a one-of-a-kind artifact, essentially freezing a moment of mechanical chaos into solid metal, and collectors love coins that tell a clear story, and few stories are more compelling than a coin that physically bears the scars of its own flawed creation. And alignment errors also play a role in the potential valuation of a 1997 penny, particularly rotated dies, where the obverse and reverse are misaligned, and while slight rotations are not unusual, extreme rotations of 90 degrees or 180 degrees are much rarer, and when such a rotation occurs alongside other major errors, it significantly increases the coin's desirability, because it demonstrates multiple failures across different stages of production. And another intriguing possibility is the presence of missing or malformed design elements, such as a weak strike, missing date, or partial lettering, caused by insufficient striking pressure or improperly prepared dies, and missing date. Coins are especially valuable because the date is fundamental to a coin's identity, and when it is absent or barely visible, the coin becomes mysterious and anomalous, and a 1997 penny missing its date while still showing other elements clearly would raise serious questions about die preparation and strike conditions. And then there is the mint mark, or the absence of one, because pennies in 1997 were produced at multiple mints, each with its own operational environment, and a mismatched, malformed, or missing mint mark could indicate improper die usage or die mixing between facilities, something that should never happen under normal circumstances, and such errors are closely studied because they suggest systemic issues rather than isolated accidents, and systemic issues can produce extremely rare and historically significant coins. And the $14 million figure often cited in discussions of a legendary 1997 penny is not pulled from thin air, it is based on comparisons to other unique or near-unique coins that have sold for millions, adjusted for inflation, demand, and the increasing interest in modern-era coinage, because as classic rarities become locked away in collections and museums, wealthy collectors increasingly turn their attention to modern coins that challenge official narratives and reveal hidden aspects of minting history. And the 1997 penny has the potential to do exactly that, especially if it were linked to experimental processes or transitional planning related to future changes in coin composition or production methods, and transitional errors are among the most prized in all of numismatics because they exist at the boundary between old and new, capturing a moment of change that was never meant to be seen by the public. Last. 1991 1 cent, today because what we're about to explore is one of those stories that completely reshapes how you think about everyday objects, especially something as overlooked and underestimated as a penny. And today we're diving deep into the mystery, the speculation, and the incredible possibilities surrounding a 1991 1 cent coin that, because of an extraordinary convergence of errors, mistakes, and minting anomalies, has been discussed as potentially being worth up to $12 million. Which sounds unbelievable until you begin to understand how numismatic value is created, how rarity multiplies itself through compounded errors, and how history has repeatedly shown that the smallest accidents can lead to the most astonishing outcomes, because the 1991 penny, like every other cent of its time, began its life as nothing more than a piece of everyday currency, designed to pass quickly from hand to hand, never meant to be admired or scrutinized, and yet it was minted during a period of immense production pressure at the United States Mint, when billions of coins were being struck annually to meet the needs of a growing economy, and whenever production reaches that scale, perfection becomes fragile, systems are stressed, equipment wears down, human oversight slips, and that is precisely where legendary error coins are born. And 1991 is a particularly interesting year because it sits firmly within a transitional era for U.S. coinage, where older machinery was still in use, quality control protocols were evolving, and internal discussions about coin composition, production efficiency, and cost reduction were already underway behind closed doors, creating a complex environment where extraordinary mistakes could and did occur. And one of the most significant factors that drives the $12 million valuation of a hypothetical 1991 penny is the possibility of a wrong planchet error, which occurs when a coin is struck on a blank piece of metal intended for a completely different denomination or purpose, and wrong planchet errors are among the most dramatic and valuable minting mistakes because they immediately signal a breakdown in one of the most fundamental controls at the mint, the separation and handling of different metal blanks, and in the case of a 1991 penny, this could mean it was struck on a planchet meant for a dime, a nickel, a foreign coin produced under contract, or even a test or experimental planchet that was never intended to enter circulation. And perhaps the most tantalizing possibility of all is that a 1991 penny was struck on a solid copper or bronze planchet, because by that year pennies were officially supposed to be made of zinc with a thin copper plating, and solid copper planchets had been discontinued nearly a decade earlier, yet history has proven that leftover planchets can remain in bins, get lodged in machinery, or resurface unexpectedly years later, and if a solid copper 1991 penny were authenticated, its weight, sound, and metal composition would immediately contradict official mint records, making it one of the most important modern error coins ever discovered, and metal composition errors alone can command huge premiums, but the value skyrockets when they are combined with striking errors, and one of the most powerful striking errors in numismatics is the doubled die, which occurs during the creation of the die itself, not during the striking of individual coins, resulting in genuine doubling of design elements such as the date, lettering, or Lincoln's portrait, and a strong double die on a 1991 penny would already be highly desirable, but if that doubling appeared on a wrong planchet or an off-metal strike, the rarity would multiply exponentially, because the probability of both errors occurring together is extraordinarily low, and collectors are willing to pay staggering sums for coins that represent multiple independent failures within the minting process. And another major contributor to the $12 million discussion is the possibility of a mule error, one of the rarest and most sensational mistakes the mint can make, where the obverse and reverse dies used do not belong together, and while mules are extremely rare in U.S. coinage, especially in modern issues, they are not impossible, and documented examples from other denominations prove that even the most tightly controlled systems can fail, and if a 1991 penny were discovered with a reverse intended for another denomination or another series entirely, it would represent an unprecedented breakdown in die management, and such a coin would almost certainly be unique, and uniqueness is the ultimate driver of value at the highest levels of collecting, because a one-of-one coin cannot be replicated, replaced, or compared, and collectors with vast resources are willing to compete fiercely to own something no one else can, and then there are die break and die crack errors, which occur when the die used to strike coins begins to fracture under immense pressure, and while small die cracks are relatively common, massive die breaks that create large raised areas known as cuds are far rarer, especially when they dramatically obscure or alter major design elements, and a 1991 penny with a large retained cud covering part of the date, the portrait, or the lettering would already be a standout error, but when combined with other anomalies such as wrong metal composition or double dies, it becomes something truly extraordinary, and visually dramatic errors tend to command higher prices because they clearly show the physical evidence of failure, making the coin a tangible record of the minting process going wrong, and strike-through errors also play a significant role in this story, occurring when a foreign object interferes with the striking process and leaves behind impressions, voids, or embedded material in the coin's surface, and these objects can include grease, cloth fibers, metal shavings, fragments of dies, or even pieces of other planchets, and while minor grease-filled strikes are common, dramatic strike-throughs that leave identifiable shapes or textures are far rarer, and a 1991 penny struck through a fragment of another coin or a piece of die steel would be a one-of-a-kind artifact, freezing a moment of mechanical chaos into solid metal. And alignment errors further add to the list of possibilities, particularly rotated dies, where the obverse and reverse are misaligned relative to each other, and while slight rotations are not unusual, extreme rotations of 90 degrees or 180 degrees are significantly rarer, and when such a rotation occurs alongside other major errors, it demonstrates multiple failures across different stages of production, greatly increasing the coin's desirability. And missing or malformed design elements are another intriguing possibility, including weak strikes, missing letters, or even a missing date. Caused by insufficient striking pressure, grease-filled dies, or improperly prepared dies, and missing date coins are especially valuable because the date is one of the most fundamental identifiers of a coin, and when it is absent or barely visible, the coin becomes mysterious and anomalous, raising immediate questions about how it was produced, and the mint mark, or the absence of one, also plays a role. Because pennies in 1991 were produced at multiple facilities, each with its own operating conditions, and a malformed, misplaced, or missing mint mark could indicate improper die usage or die mixing between mints, something that should not happen under normal circumstances, and such errors are closely studied because they suggest systemic issues rather than isolated accidents, and systemic issues can produce clusters of rare errors that become historically significant. And the $12 million valuation often discussed in connection with a legendary 1991 penny is not arbitrary. It is based on comparisons to other unique or near-unique coins that have sold for millions, adjusted for inflation, demand, and the growing interest in modern-era coinage, because as classic rarities become locked away in long-term collections and museums, wealthy collectors increasingly turn their attention to modern coins that challenge official narratives and reveal hidden aspects of minting history. And the 1991 penny has the potential to do exactly that, especially if it were linked to experimental processes or transitional planning related to future changes in coin composition or production methods, because transitional errors are among the most prized in all of numismatics, existing at the boundary between old and new, capturing a moment of change that was never meant to be seen by the public. And condition plays a crucial role as well, because an error coin that is heavily worn still has value, but an error coin in uncirculated or near perfect condition is exponentially more valuable. And if a $12,001,991 penny exists, it would almost certainly need to be in exceptional shape, with sharp details, original surfaces, and minimal wear, because high-grade examples amplify rarity, and rarity amplifies demand, and demand drives prices into the realm of the extraordinary. And third-party grading and authentication are essential in this process, because for a coin to reach such a valuation, it must be thoroughly examined by experts using metal composition analysis, precise weight measurement, die study comparisons, and microscopic inspection, and if all tests confirm that the coin is genuine and exhibits unprecedented characteristics, its credibility becomes unassailable, and credibility is everything when collectors are considering spending millions, and beyond the technical aspects.